Hello, hi, how are you? Welcome on in to another podcast by George. Well, just me today. That's all there is. There ain't no more. That's all you're going to get. Just me. I'm going to do what they call a rant here. I don't do a lot of these. The show is all about my guests. When I started this, I told everybody nobody cares what I think, what I feel, what I believe. Let's get some experts on here. Let's get some truth seekers on here. Let's get some truth tellers on here to explain to people what in the hell is going on. And that's what we've been doing now for over 4 years, 450 episodes. And the guests that I've had on are stellar. And I want to do a bit of a preview here coming up on October 24th. Next week, one of the best, one of the biggest that I've ever had on, Chris Hedges, the award winning, the Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, is going to be on Podcast by George to talk about his new book, and it's all about war, and you don't want to miss that. October 24th. Check that out. But the guests that we've had on in the past, we've had on Michael Tracy, Matt Taibbi, Aaron Mate's been on, Ron Placone, the great Lee Camp, Matthew Ho, of course, Laura Bellin here talking about the state of Iowa. Everybody loves Laura. And most recently, Misty Winston's another example of an outstanding guest that we've had on this show. But today, again, it's just me, and I'm going to be talking about some things that other people don't talk about. Again, that was kind of the idea of this thing when I started it. And just in the past 2 weeks, you've seen this. This guy's name is Dan Ellers. Now, he's down there in Fort Myers Beach, Florida. He's a city councilman. So he not only is speaking from a personal perspective, he's also speaking from a council person's perspective. He didn't leave when the hurricane warnings came out. He wrote it out. He went to a friend's house and was standing on the second floor with the water rising. Fortunately, it didn't get above the second floor. It didn't get above his nose. He didn't drown. But I asked Dan on the show whether or not that was a wise decision. And he said, in retrospect, no, I guess it wasn't. And he explained why he didn't leave. And that was a really precedent-setting podcast. I mean, it was live, and it was just a couple of days after the hurricane had hit. They were still digging themselves out and still wading through the flood waters. It was really great stuff. That was 2 weeks ago. And then right after that, we had on what I call the hero from the heartland. That's a great shot of TJ there. TJ Gardner, just off my left side. He's from Des Moines. He loaded up a rental truck and drove down to Fort Myers Beach, down in the Fort Myers area, and was helping out victims down there, and told a harrowing tale of 4 children that were abandoned, that were lost, that were wandering, and they were found. And he told the story about how their mother was working, if you can believe that, the day before the hurricane hit, or the day the hurricane hit, didn't make it home, was swept away in the floodwaters, and the kids were out on their own wandering, basically, when they were found. You ain't going to hear that story anywhere else. And that was on Podcast by George just within the last 2 weeks. And then, of course, last Friday, a returnee, somebody that everybody likes. Whenever he's on, there's a lot of viewers. And it's Serhiy Tagnorendo out there in Kiev, Ukraine. Now, he's a musician. He's got an apartment in Kiev. He sent his family to Poland, and he stayed behind. He's also got a studio, and he's been on regularly to talk about the strikes on Ukraine and on his city, Kiev. Well, here's what happened just today, actually, the reporting on this. The U.S. condemns war crimes after Russia drone attack hits Kiev apartment block. Now, Kiev's a big city. This didn't hit Serhiy's apartment. I don't want anybody to think that, but we were on the podcast just Friday, just 3 or 4 days ago, talking about drones over the city of Kiev and what this means. Well, they call them kamikaze drones, and this is in the news. And again, I'm pretty proud of the fact that we had this on Podcast by George. Okay, now here's a couple of things. This is really what the rant's all about. I've had more contact, more people kind of accost me about this. Let's bring her picture up on screen. Folks, you know who that is. That's Tulsi Gabbard. I was a supporter of hers in the 2020 election, and people remember that. And so now they're, jumping on me about supporting Tulsi and saying, what about this? We've got this blue versus red, the Bloods versus the Crips thing with politics here in the United States. And she said, look, I'm no longer a Democrat. So everybody took that to mean, I guess, that she's a Republican, which is not the case. She's an independent, but everybody's hitting on me about it. And what the hell? I don't know. I do know that if you fall in love with a politician, I don't care who it is, you're going to be sorely disappointed. So I'm never going to go there. I'm not in love with Tulsi Gabbard. I did like some of her positions, but here's what I'll say about Tulsi. She's either the smartest politician that we've ever had, or she's as dumb as about half the populace of America. Here's the way that I'm putting it to people. She was the co-chair of Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016, his election attempt then, and found out all of the wrongdoings, all of the malfeasance from the Democratic National Committee when it came to Bernie's campaign. And she resigned as vice chair of the DNC over what happened to Bernie. That was in 2016. She went out on her own. She ran for president for 2020. Couldn't get any traction, didn't get any support from the Democrats whatsoever. Worse than that, Hillary Clinton came out and called her a Russian asset, if you can imagine. My God. And she's a lieutenant colonel in the Army, has taken the oath of office as a congressperson and in the military. No one could have their credentials more bona fide. Nobody could be more real than Tulsi Gabbard. And because of all of this insanity with Russiagate and all that, was called a Russian asset. So what did she do? She looked at it and said, well, look, my experience with the DNC and with Bernie, my own campaign, is I'm not going to save the world from itself, save humanity from itself when it comes to what I call the big three on Podcast by George: climate, war, and healthcare. I can't save us left of the Democratic Party. I tried, failed. I can't do it from within the Democratic Party. Tried, failed. I can't do it using the Democratic Party's platforms. They won't even let her on. She can't get him. MSNBC or CNN can't get in the door. So where did she go? She went to Fox and she took a look around. I think this is what I would have done anyway, and said, look, there's a precedent. It's called the Bull Moose Party. There's a precedent with some independent parties maybe getting some things done in this country. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pick on these Fox viewers, and they've proven they're what I call malleable. They can be made to follow things. Whereas the left, the Democratic Party, would never do that when it came to climate, war, and healthcare. But to be able to get it done on those primary issues, I'm going to throw these people some secondary societal red meat issues to get them to follow me. So she's out there talking about things, everything from, transgender rights to this militarism thing, even some gun rights issues and that type of thing. And I'm going to get these people to follow me, and I'm going to join with the left that's still out there and still believes that we're at risk over climate, war, and healthcare, and try to either get myself elected, get someone else elected, or maybe to get some policies enacted that will allow us to save ourselves. And here's the point that I make to people. Oh my God, you can't support her. She said this, she said that. Okay. Flashback a little bit. Barack Obama. He talked about codifying Roe v. Wade. He campaigned on that. That was a big deal with Obama when he was running for office. When he got into office and was questioned about it, I will say one thing about the guy. He was usually honest. He said, nah, I ain't going to do that. That's not the number one thing on my agenda. I got to tell you, that's going to do nothing but alienate half the country, put us at each other's throats. I got other stuff to do. So he didn't tell the truth about that. He got it elected. He did do some of the other things that he wanted to do. Donald Trump. Flash forward a little bit. In 2016, he came out and said that he was going to end the foreign wars, that he was going to solve the immigration issue, that he was going to do something about all of these jobs going overseas. He was going to get us a wonderful or a splendid or a fabulous healthcare system or some goofy shit like that. Guess what? He got elected. Then when he got into office, what did he do? Well, it wasn't exactly telling the truth after all. He didn't do any of those things. He didn't even try to do any of those things. You know what he did do? The number one priority that he did have that he didn't talk about a lot because it wouldn't have helped him get elected, certainly. He helped out his oligarchy. He helped out his big bros, the people with the bucks. He gave them big time tax breaks. He got that accomplished. He put in kind of a pseudo tariff that he quickly withdrew when it came to agricultural products, made all the big ag concerns rich. He did manage to get that done. But the point of it is, you can say things, you can campaign on things, And you don't have to be telling the truth. To put it in very basic historical perspective, I talk about the great Bob Dylan when he was, still running around as a ragamuffin out in New York City trying to make it on a first album that wasn't selling. They asked him about his background. He said everything from that he was a carny, a traveling carnival worker, to a cowboy. And when they found out it wasn't true, he said, well, so what? Hell, I don't have to tell you guys the truth. There's nothing illegal about lying to you to get myself over. So, maybe that's what Tulsi Gabbard is doing. I tell people that either she's Obi-Wan Kenobi and she's the smartest politician that we've ever had, maybe since, Teddy Roosevelt or something like that. And she's she's doing this and no one can see it except for me. And I can't get her to come on my show to either own up or disavow what I'm talking about. It's just a possibility. It's just something that's possible that I tell people. I don't know that it is, but we can't do any worse. I tell people, look at her. Look at this situation in Ukraine as an example. We can't even send anybody over there. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. What if we had sent somebody like her? What if we had sent that person over to meet with Vladimir Putin? This is an ex-CIA, ex-CIA, ex-KGB, same thing, in Russia, a military guy, and he rides around on a horse with no shirt on. What if we'd sent her over there? Now, I don't want to be, a sexist or whatever, but look at her. Look at this picture off on my left side. Now, we could have sent her, or we could have sent nobody, which is what we're doing, or we could have sent somebody like Joe Biden. Who's more likely to get something done, do you think? I've always said this from the beginning. Again, I'm talking about saving the war. So if you send somebody over that looks and talks and has the bona fides of Tulsi Gabbard, maybe they could prevail upon a Vladimir Putin and some of these other old war hawks around the world to sit down and listen and do something about climate, war, and healthcare. Now, like I said, she's either Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I don't know, or she could just be a Wookiee with a nice hairdo. Hell, I don't know. I'm not related to her. I'm not her campaign manager. I'm not on the inside of this. I'm just saying. So that's the Tulsi Gabbard perspective that you're not hearing anywhere else. I don't agree with some of her views, but think about what I'm talking about. Are they really views, or are they just a way to get people to follow her, to get her elected, to get a politician elected that she favors, or maybe to get some policy enacted that will save us all? Okay, so let me bring this next one up on screen because this is really important. And you're going to look at this and say, what the hell's this? Folks, that's Warren Zevon, the great Warren Zevon. Rest in peace, a great musician out of my era, out of the 70s. One of the first free radio albums I ever got free at a radio station was Warren Zevon's Excitable Boy. But this is a little promo photo for The Envoy. Go to YouTube and listen to that song. It couldn't be more pertinent than what we're talking about today. And I can't play it for you because I'll get a copyright strike or something from YouTube or Facebook. But it's all about sending in an envoy. Instead of sending $50 billion more into Ukraine, sending in, a million more bombs and missiles and bullets and drones and who the hell knows what else that is simply killing people to get an end to this, which is going to come in the form of a settlement. Why not send in an envoy to do that right now, to get at least a ceasefire? I've said on my show, every minute that you have a ceasefire is another minute that somebody isn't getting blown apart. Even if it's a faulty ceasefire, it might be another 2 minutes that somebody's not getting blown apart, but at least it will work on a temporary basis and it can lead to a settlement, because all wars get settled or we all die, folks. Listen to Warren Zevon and The Envoy. So, who are we going to send? Who's going to be our envoy? Who's going to go over there to get this thing done? I volunteer. Nobody else is doing it. We got a president that's in the latter stages, to say the least, of his life. We've got a U.S. senator here in Iowa that is 89 years. I don't know. He's 115 years old, I think. Charles Grassley. I mean, send those guys. What are they afraid of? That their life is going to end early? Even me. Look at me. I'll go. I got more in the cart than I got out in front of the horse. Folks, I'm pretty much used up. I got some years left. But if I could save the world from destroying itself when it comes to climate war and healthcare, if I could win a Nobel Peace Prize, if I could get on Dancing with the Stars, I'd do it. I guarantee it. So how do I do it? Well, here's how I do it. Take a look at this. This is the Park Hotel. This is the conference room. This is located very close to the Ukraine-Russian border, actually. I looked this up. We spent $50 billion on arms to Ukraine while our country's going to hell in a handbasket. This conference room is $50. Yeah, your room, $50. You can get the conference room, $50. They'll give it to you. I'll go over there and I'll sit down with whoever Russia and Ukraine will send and we'll work something out. If I can get an hour-long ceasefire, that'll save some lives. It's got to do some good. If I can get this thing settled, I'll be world famous. Podcast by George will be on the lips of every American from now until my great-great-grandchildren get their history books. I mean, that's a fact. That's all we have got to do. Or we can take a chance that the bombs are going to rain down and they're going to solve a war. War cannot be ended with more war. That's just not the way it works. At some point in time, we've got to sit down and get this thing settled. Tulsi Gabbard would be a good envoy. I don't think she has any fear. It doesn't strike me as any. Send her. Send me. Hell, we'll both get elected. It'll be a great thing. I look at this picture of Tulsi. The other thing I'm struck by, somebody told me the reason that I like Tulsi Gabbard is because she looks like my wife. Younger years. I can't necessarily disagree with it. Okay, so that's going to do it. That's going to wrap it up, folks. I just wanted to go through this and do a little bit of a rant, do something more personal because I don't normally do this. And I've been doing some things that aren't naturally progressive as far as politics are concerned. Maybe you would consider this to be progressive. I certainly consider it to be left wing. I think that's our solution. I don't think running further right, as America has done since Ronald Reagan, is going to get this solved, that we're going to fix the big three: climate, war, and healthcare. I think California is going to run out of water in 3 or 4 years. I think we're living in a 2020 world. We're in danger of dying in 20 years or sooner from climate change or 20 minutes from an accidental nuclear attack. And when it comes to healthcare, there is reporting that 1/3 of the people that died in the pandemic died because they didn't have Medicare for all. My God, you can hit a dog with your car, take it to the vet and get it treated, but you can't do that with a person here in this country unless they have an insurance card. It's absolute insanity. 1/3 of the people, 300,000 plus, died because they didn't have Medicare for all. And we consider ourselves to be a shining light on the hill, to be an advanced civilization. God, you can't make it up. I don't know how we could get any dumber. That's going to do it, folks. Don't want to end on a downer there, but I'm running out of time. Stay tuned. We got more great things coming up on Podcast by George. Watch for that Chris Hedges show. It's coming up October 24th. That is going to be a good one. This new book that he has written is absolutely stellar. And that's coming up on Podcast by George. Go to podcastbygeorge.com. Sign up. You can do it. You can do it on Facebook. You can do it on YouTube. That's where the icons are for the platforms. And then in audio, you can get iTunes, Deezer, Stitcher, Spotify, the iHeartRadio app, and places like that. So that is it. That's going to do it. And there ain't no more. That's another Podcast by George.